Good morning from the Black Press of America. This is Let It Be Known News. I am totally Randy, and I know you're used to looking forward to the amazing host, Stacey Brown. He will be back later this week. Have no fear, though. I have some amazing women joining me this morning. I love to be with my Black Press family. The amazing managing editor of the Washington Informer, Miss Misha Green. Also, we'll be joined with the national correspondent, Dawn Montgomery. I cannot wait. She'll be joining us a little bit later. But Misha, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing well. How are you?
I am feeling great because, like one of our comments said, I am not traveling today. This is the worst travel day of the year.
Well,
so all of those out there traveling, we hope you have safe travels. Misha, are you traveling this week?
I am not traveling anymore. I did travel Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
And so I got a little taste of how the holiday travel was looking, but I got to admit, it wasn't really bad. I invest in ways to make it easier though. So I used Clear and like that. I checked in before, those kinds of things, so that I can make sure I got to my destination on time. But Godspeed to all those out there who are going to be with their families. I know Dawn is actually out of town right now as well. And so we're sending her love and light, and hopefully she'll be on soon.
Absolutely. So look, you guys, I know that you are joining us this morning. You could be anywhere else in the world, but you're sitting right here with us. And thank you guys for that. Thank you for joining us. Let's go ahead and hop into our trending topics. McCarthyism back in 2023.
Mr. Welch here has been filibustering this hearing. He's been talking day after day about the way he wants to get anyone tainted with communism out before sundown.
All over the United States, people are questioning, people are standing up, people are educating themselves, people are stepping away from brainwashing that started when they were kids. We're in an emergency situation, but it's not easy to throw off all that brainwashing, all that conditioning that's been going on for years and years. So I would say, be strong, be patient, be clear, and stand with anybody that has the courage to speak out in your office, in your school, in your homes. We need to be there for each other. This can't happen alone. And we can see how much people care and that it is in the forefront of their minds. And we can't let it leave the forefront of their minds. So happy holidays.
Right. So Susan Sarandon, you guys, Oscar-winning actress, 77 years old, made a statement that, Jewish people are getting a taste of what it feels like to be Muslim. That's what was clipped from the statement. But she actually said there are a lot of people who are afraid of being Jewish at this time, and they are getting a taste of what it feels like to be a Muslim in this country. And because of that, of course, she was dropped. Misha, let's talk about it.
Oh my goodness. So first of all, I want to say for anybody who is out here using their platform to try to spread peace and positivity, kudos to you. And that is, I'm trying to be very, 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 very careful in what I say. But I think that what we see here is a classic case, not only of what people are saying is McCarthyism is back, but I think people being admonished for standing up, having a voice. And so that's all that I'm going to say right there. Like I see Stacey's comment, careful, Mimi. I'm being very, very careful on this subject.
Yes.
But I do want to say that I am proud to see people attempting to make informed stances and using statistics to back up the things that they're saying in certain cases, and I'll leave it there.
And Sarandon did say that she's not Islamophobe or anti-Semitic, but her talent agency dropped her anyway. And then we also have Melissa Barrera, who's no longer starring in Scream 7. She was also dropped from the project after a series of social media posts, Mimi, that she put on her stories. She said that Gaza is currently being treated like a concentration camp. She wrote concerning everyone, that she's concerning everyone together with no, there's nowhere to go there. There's no electricity. There's no water. And she was just putting this on her stories. She said that this is genocide and ethnic cleansing. And because of that, she is no longer in that Scream franchise. She broke out in 2022, when Scream came out in the Scream 6 series, but they dropped her because of that. And, people are claiming McCarthyism because of that. And again, I'm with you, Mimi, on I'm with you on how this is playing out. But also there was one that producer Grio just gave us as well. She gave us that the American Islam Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, is expected to spend at least $100 million in the Democratic primaries in effort to knock out 7 squad members. And then, of course, it goes into who's all included in that. It's just a lot going on, right?
Yeah, well, the squad has been under attack as soon as they became the squad, and as soon as they brought out these very new and in many ways progressive ideals, and sort of spoke and presented in a way that people weren't accustomed to as their politicians. And so, and they were very, very open about being anti-Donald Trump and anti the old boys club. And that was from both sides. They were critical in some of the Democrats who were attempting to keep with old ways and traditions in the same way that they were very obviously critical of the GOP. And so the squad has been under attack by their members of their own party, as well as on the other side for a minute now, particularly Rashida Tlaib. I don't want to say it incorrectly, Tlaib, I think, because she has taken this really major anti-Israel stance, and being the only Palestinian in Congress, first of all, a Palestinian American in Congress. And so Stacey said he's always loved AOC's energy. Yeah, a lot of people have, but then there's been a lot of people anti-AOC. You know what I mean? No one had time for Ayanna Pressley for a minute. This is not new. The squad has been under attack. And so I'm not shocked by this, but I think that when you are looking at a time of war and correlating in a time that we're having an election, I think that you're going to see groups really trying to come after those who they don't think represent the things that they care about. And groups with a lot of money tend to be the ones ready to go.
There's a lot, right?
Yes.
There's a lot. David Youngblood says the squad represents the constituency that voted for them. What we cannot do is allow others to decide our leaders. I was thinking about that, Mimi. What does that mean for the voters? Like, what does this mean for the voters?
No, David, thank you for that point. It's a really good point. When the squad got elected, their constituents were young, active, and people who were sometimes voting for the first time. We got a lot of the new Gen Zers in their election. And so, David, you're completely right. The big thing we have to do is be outspoken about young people making their voices heard. You hear a lot of people talk about, what's the point of voting for the lesser of two evils and things like that. No, get out there, vote. And not just in in the primary elections or presidential elections, but for these local elections as well. I know here in DC, we're gearing up for some big things, June 2024, to, obviously get us some new representatives on our DC council. And so I just encourage people to vote in general, make your voices heard, get out there, get out there.
Speaking of that, Misha, it's all about the facts, right? Like, you have to know the facts and you do have to be informed. And speaking of that, that's a great segue to our next conversation about Roland Martin Unfiltered. Did you see who is Mark Fisher? Did you see that clip? I wonder if producer Grio has it, the clip that goes up. But this guy was very, very, very interesting. He was an ex-Black Lives Matter. So when I first did it, I thought he was still leading.
Me too.
Rhode Island. I really, when I first saw it, I thought he was still leading, but he started Black Lives Incorporated. So he's an ex-Black Lives Matter Rhode Island leader, supposedly, that started, that kind of did a splinter off with Black Lives Incorporated. But I was looking at the entire 32-minute interview that Roland Martin did with him, and it was mind-blowing. I said,
whatever's in their best interest for their own expedience and their careers. But every time it happens, it comes back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, throw him in prison, take all his assets, throw him under the bus, take him off the ballots. Like, you don't think people can see this?
So what you're saying is
this is anti-American.
What you're saying is actually no, because there's a sign above the Supreme Court. It says equal justice under law. What you're saying is you don't mind a liar. What you're saying is you don't mind somebody making.
What did he lie about?
Donald Trump lied about the value of his assets. Donald Trump has lied about not trying to overturn.
Can I say something?
Mark, I'm not done.
On that point, I just want to, because you said he lied about the value of his assets. You're saying that he lied, his people are lying for him all the time. So what I'm saying is, if he's asking for 11,000 votes, if they're doing that, if he's asking people to make his property as lucrative and as attractive as possible, and these people are doing it, right? They're doing it. Whether they're doing it or not, that is their own personal business and choice to do that. If he says, I'm looking for 11,000 votes, I know people who have reached out to me, Black people, who tell me that there has been all kind of fishy business going on.
And Mark,
double voting, triple, quadruple,
and you're right,
quintuple voting. No, I can tell you, people are reaching out to me, telling me they keep calling him Bill, William, Willis, so on and so on. And the Democratic elected.
So you say
oversight.
Oh my God, I see double voting.
That's what people are telling me.
But the Republicans in Georgia.
So I'm just saying,
Mark, wait a minute, Mark.
There's reason.
I'm going to finish, Mark.
There's reasonable.
The more you listen to it, it's absolutely asinine. This guy had zero facts. Not only did he have zero facts, Roland Martin would make this statement throughout the entire interview that he was just simply making things up. Specifically, when he went into the spiel about, Trump has done more for Black people. Misha, you mentioned and you talked about local elections, right? This guy behaved as if he didn't even know how Congress worked. He was like, Trump was passing all of these. It was really, really insane. As if he was off the street with no political knowledge of anything. I mean,
well, first of all, thank you, producer Greer, for playing that clip, because I had not seen the whole thing. I did see Black Twitter acting up about it, or not acting up, speaking out. And thank you, Black Twitter, for doing so on this. But, I think Black Twitter cuts up in the most beautiful of ways. So for those watching, make sure you go and just Google or put in the search engine of, Twitter, now X, and you'll see a lot of folks commenting on this. But it made my brain, this photo of Roland, my alpha brother, holding his head is exactly how I am feeling post watching just a few moments of that interview. Even the Donald Trump the photo doesn't understand how Mark Fisher is supporting him.
Right. Right.
All I can say is this is exactly what we just talked about, being misinformed and not knowing anything about how government really works, not knowing anything about how decisions are made for our lives. Because if that were the case, there would be no way that he could say that Donald Trump has done more for Black people than any other president. That said, this has been a trending line I've seen in terms of, I won't even call them Black conservatives, but Black extremists, MAGA extremists is what I'll say. That's been a phrase that Donald Trump has done more for Black people. But when you ask for the receipts, when you ask for, well, explain some of the things he's done, then it gets quiet. But I also think that this is an example of why we need to really focus on the issues at hand. I don't think that people are really even understanding what needs to be addressed in their country and for their communities. And so us as storytellers need to really be saying, okay, right now, affordable housing is still a crisis, not only in local communities, but federally. Environmental justice is something that's affecting our people. Crime is at an all-time high here in the district, and we can look at other places around the country and see a trend that all relate to inequities for Black Americans. I mean, when we're focusing on those sorts of things, then we can have people having informed conversations about what their leaders are doing to help their community. I saw Orangey's comment about he didn't even know that there were Black people in Rhode Island, which I think is hilarious. But I want to know what Mark Fisher was doing as a leader for BLM.
Absolutely, I do too. And before I hop into that, I want to go back to some of the things that he did say that Trump did for Black people that was more beneficial than he brought up Obama, who's not in this right. Like Roland was like, "Hello, he's not running." But we're gonna go there.
That is 8 years,
right? I was just like, "Why are we doing this?" But before, it was so funny. Stacey Brown, I like his comment that said, "How much they paid that guy?" At least get someone who can articulate. Stacey, I was feeling the exact same way. How much was he getting paid? And also, Stacey put here that the problem is blind loyalty, whether it's Trump, Biden, any celebrity, or even religious figures. Folks need to think for themselves and stop worshiping humans. Yeah. I kind of feel the exact same way, because when you say things like he's done more, and Roland says, okay, we'll name something. He, number one, talks about the money, the 90 million that Trump, gives to HBCUs. And he said, he was like, and that's more than Biden has given. And so Roland comes out with the facts, and he says, you're putting 90 million up against 6.5 billion. And he asked him, what college did you attend? And he said, I did a year at Hampton University. And so Roland goes to Hampton University and starts listing the millions that they were receiving. See, when you talk about facts versus what I feel like Mark Fisher was doing, which is emotions, I don't know how his emotions got there. That's none of my business. But it's really was facts against emotions, and how you feel about something versus the facts is totally, totally crazy. But here's the problem, Mimi. We putting this type of information out, misinformation out, is very detrimental, especially with 2024 and a big election coming up, right? Because as you said, most people do not vote locally. They're not informed locally. They don't know who to vote for locally. But 2024, they'll roll out for that. They'll come out for that, not knowing that local starts first in clearing up the issues that you want fixed. And how big of a problem is this with this misinformation?
So obviously this is not a new issue. In the last election, that was something that really became a hot topic, that made it all the way to Congress in terms of some of the social media platforms that were spewing some of these alternative facts, if you will, and really going after that and attacking it. And so I first want to say that I appreciate that there have been pretty consistent conversations about the fact that we have to try to get real news and real information and real facts out there. That said, it's a free-for-all because of social media, because people and organizations who are, first of all, far more eloquent than a Mark Fisher, if you will, but can sort of spew out things that people really believe in, even if there's no factual basis, or it sounds good or looks good or
Right.
it's trendy. And so that, because of that free for all, again, it goes back to people like us who really have to be adamant about making sure that the real news gets out there. Also, and I love Oren G's point about all politics are local. Yeah, everything goes back to how it affects you and your community. And so, in the same way that people are very critical about some of the decisions that Biden has made, or this Mark Fisher is so supportive of some of Donald Trump's decisions. Let's see how some of those decisions trickle down to you or to your children or to the soup kitchen in your neighborhood or to your police department. And I think that people would really get an understanding of who's really being helped, and the people in their communities that are really out there supporting and empowering better lives. And I don't think that is something that we talk about enough. So certainly what's happened, these particular, I look at DC because we are so federally intertwined, not being an actual state. So for all of my Washingtonians out there tuning in, hello. But it really matters what's happening on the federal level. It truly trickles down to what's happening in our communities, and it goes the other way. What's happening in our communities goes all the way up in many ways to the federal level.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, I see David Youngblood talk about mis and disinformed. Disinformation is pervasive in our communities. And I agree with that. I agree. And a lot of it is because they're looking for people to give them the information, to feed them the information, versus doing research and gathering the information ourselves. So I agree. I mean, I know people out there might disagree, but for me, I agree that it plagues our communities really, really badly. And this is a great example. Again, I could go into another thing that he talked about was the contracts. He said, and it hadn't been passed or anything. So when he first told Roland that, yeah, he did this, if Trump did this, he was like, no, this was just, it was just in concept. It hadn't passed anything. And plus, inside of it, so he hadn't even read it, because inside of it, Trump said that he was going to give $500 billion to Black businesses. And the federal government only gives out $560 billion. Like, it was mind blowing. And then after that fact was given to him and his theory was debunked, he said, well, I can't speak for Trump. And I'm like, but you're going around like, make it make sense, but that it can never make sense.
No. I mean, I think that, again, we look at these kinds of people, truth is not the priority. Right. By any means. If it were, they would do their research. If truth was at top of importance for their lives, they would be better informed. And it's just not the case. Stacey said, Stacey, you're basically a part of the show. I just want to.
I was like, where are you, Stacey?
Like, you might as well just have been on.
I'm on, yeah.
But yeah, they're certainly going to X for their research. I also just want to shout out because I saw he was on, and hello to everybody tuning in.
Yes.
It's so happy to see y'all. Also, I'm not dying. I had to go to the doctor yesterday.
I didn't even see it. So look, your beauty is so beautiful.
I'm not like worried about me. But anyway, but I also want to say happy birthday to another Alpha brother, not Roland Martin, but Austin Cooper, who is also tuning in yesterday. Was his
hi, Austin.
Austin is also often on the show, so I wanted to say
yeah. Also, I do want to real fast before we move on, Misha. I saw that Stacey did put that Roland should have set and enforced ground rules. Is there anything Roland could have done, honestly? Is there anything he could have done?
Well, let me, first of all, it's Roland Martin Unfiltered. And so part of who Roland is, and this show in particular, is to be, please don't be offended by this word. Roland, if you're watching, I can't think of a better word, but a bit edgy, a bit somewhat controversial, having controversial guests so that Roland can Roland, and show that he, first of all, does his research, because, Roland is on it. He, as you saw, he has his facts and receipts ready to go. But that's somewhat part of the show, is to have that yelling back and forth and things like that. That said, I am a big fan of ground rules to avoid such things personally. But that's because I can't, just get to Roland's level and be there with somebody who is not well prepared, like a Mike Fisher, because then it's me rolling my eyes and just ready to after a certain place. And so I think in that regard, part of why Roland maybe did not set ground rules, and for all we know, he did, and that's where it got even with
right. And I saw someone say that he shouldn't have, guests like that. I believe on Twitter, not you guys in the comments. Thank you guys for putting your comments. But if you feel that way, if you feel like he shouldn't have guests, go ahead and drop that in the comments as well. I also would love for you guys to tell me this. I personally feel like that he should have guests like that. And the reason why is because, like I believe OG said it, there are a lot of people who think the same way. They go off of their emotions. They do not know the facts, and they think the same way. They gather with what they hear from others, and they are a part of that same thought process that Mark obviously had, where he literally had to say, I don't know, because he's being fed information versus going and getting the facts. And I think that's important for Roland to have those types of guests on a huge platform like that, because then you're able to see a huge juxtaposition between facts and fiction.
Yeah, I think that Roland, certainly in this case, brought us an opportunity to not only see another perspective, but see that thought process and those ideals are a little bit flawed, a little bit, at least not well developed. And so for all those that might be using some of the same rhetoric that Mark Fisher has, at least now around their Thanksgiving table or holiday celebrations, they'll be a little bit more equipped with some facts because they watch this show. And maybe they might even have.
How about you pivot to facts?
That's so destructive to my people.
How about
and my
you
community.
pivot to facts?
That's what I pivot to.
You literally.
Now, Trump is the alternative.
No, he's not.
I support him.
Dude, you literally called the January 6 people dissenters. They were domestic terrorists.
I said what? Say that again?
You have been quoted calling the January 6 folks dissenters when they actually are domestic terrorists.
Well, listen.
You support them?
I stand in solidarity with any American brother or sister, like I said from the very beginning.
You stand in solidarity with the Oath Keepers?
That's going through hard times.
Do you stand in solidarity with the Oath Keepers? Mark?
That's because I don't take no pleasure in any American brother.
Mark,
this is the thing.
I'm asking you a question.
I know how people feel.
And I in solidarity with the Oath Keepers?
Listen,
yes or no?
I have empathy for Black people, right? Because how do you think I feel in my community? I have been castigated throughout my community and family and friends. So here's the thing, but I know how they feel. I understand.
Mark,
and guess what? Because they hate Trump. But guess what? There's no future in that. There's no future in that. I know how you feel.
Yeah, you know, I really think he did a good job. And it goes back to Roland's style. You know, part of why people watch is because Roland can handle somebody like a Mark Fisher, go back and forth with him in that way. I don't have the patience. I absolutely do not. And so the fact that Roland does it so well and you know, is able to keep the conversation going, I'm really impressed. And I think that it gave a platform for people to be better informed versus to spread misinformation.
Yeah. Stacey said Roland should have had the Sandman come out with his cane.
Yeah, see, that would have been me. That would have been me, Stacey. That totally would have been me. But you know, going back to Stacey's question before, I do think that there had to have been rules there, because if not, I wouldn't have had the patience to continue for 32 minutes like Roland did, or 30 some odd minutes.
Right.
And he kept it going. He asked hard-hitting questions and he expected facts. And when they weren't, he called him out immediately. I think that we need to be ready to do that with everything. So y'all, if you have some family members that you know gonna try you tomorrow, just, you know, have your little notes ready on your phone for some statistics to back up what you really want your family members to know, to make sure that the facts are straight. We got to get people out to the booths.
Absolutely. Now, look, we could literally dissect that all day long. It was a couple of other things that he said that Roland was like, "Are you kidding me?" that we can dissect, but I think we did a really good job of that. Just to end it, because again, you know, this is, like Stacey said, this is Ladies' Night or Ladies' Day. Stacey, that's so hilarious. Just to end it on a note, November is National Hip Hop History Month. We know that we've been celebrating Hip Hop 50 all year, and the genre is amazing. However, there is a columnist for the Grio, her at on Twitter, or X, if you want to call it. I'm never calling it X, you guys. I'm always going to call it Twitter, and I think a lot of people agree with me. She said, Cassie's revelations should be the beginning of the Me Too moment for hip hop. My latest opinion column for the Grio. And if you go into that, and I don't know if producer Grio has it up, but if you go into it, I know it. She got it up, you guys. If you go into her column for the Grio, her opinion says, we have spent all year celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop, but there have been very few conversations about the mistreatment of women by the genre's most beloved figures. Okay. And she goes into a lot of it, you guys. Again, she has it there. You can see her ad. You can go to her Twitter and read the actual column that she did for the Grio. Some of the things that she put out there, she said at the height of the Me Too movement, multiple women came out and accused a couple of people in the industry. And when the accusations became public, you know, they moved the ball or basically moved the goalpost. And she talked about in June of this year, you know, how big names, you know, their wives, or you see some other big names and some other host of journalism and things of that sort. She goes into the names. I'm specifically not saying it because I don't want this to become an argument between men and women. What I want to talk about mostly is the industry and how now it's starting to come out. Are we going to see a change, Misha?
Yes. I saw somebody, I believe in reply to this commentary. If not, they just had their own thought about it. But that some of these people who were 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, are growing up. Don!
Yes, that's what I was saying. Now it's a real party.
Now,
I am so sorry. Good morning.
No, good morning. Thank you for joining. We know that you are traveling. You should mention that earlier. You are traveling. We are sending you traveling grace. National correspondent, you guys, Dawn Montgomery. Thank you so much. A perfect segue to bring you on. We're literally speaking about something that you tweeted out. Dawn Montgomery has a podcast on revolt. She made the decision not to resign. And Dawn, one of my things that I wanted to ask you about that, because I could not wait to speak to you. I wanted to interview you myself, so I'm so glad you did as well. But a big decision. That was a big decision for you to make. And just talk to us a little bit about the process and the mental that you went through to make that decision.
I mean, we're journalists, so one of the first things we do when we see news like this, it's whether we feel it personally, professionally, from a standpoint, we have to be unbiased and we have to go looking for the court documents, any other type of documentation that kind of just adds more to us coming to some type of decision of whether or not we want to cover a subject or whether we want to talk about a subject in general. So during this time, I know that our podcast was already greenlit for season 3. So there was already conversations about the podcast coming back. But at the time that the allegations came out and everything, me and my co-host were supposed to be getting some more information over to some of the people with Revolt Podcast Network. And it was kind of like a slow process. Like it was dragging y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you know, it's like, okay, we gave you this before, but now we got to do it again. And in general, it was just one of those things where it was like, let me go read the court documents, right? And then to see the trigger warning.
Right.
And I was like, now, wait a minute, because, you know, I also have a legal background, of course. And to me, I've read court documents and I've never seen a trigger warning at the beginning of court documents, like getting ready to explain things that have happened and all of the things. So just taking the time to really kind of like zone out for a couple of hours to really read, take it in. I reached out to my therapist immediately because I was like, oh my God, like this is so triggering. I did want to talk about something like this on the podcast because we had already had like a show where I think it might have been our 3rd or 4th show. It was one of the best shows that we had on the podcast, where there was a like a sex therapist or a sex expert that was on the show, but she talked about her background and how she was sexually abused and molested and how she healed from that to really tap into her own sexuality. And that, like in general, that's something that we rarely talk about as Black women, like the healing that comes after all of that or getting us through all of that. And so just really reading the documentation, being mindful, you know, talking to a couple of my attorney friends about what I can say, what I can tweet, what I can put out there, because I don't want Diddy and them knocking on my door talking about you need to cease and desist, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I do have some type of agency and autonomy to really kind of speak up and say, I know that I might be at the bottom of the chart when it flows of how Revolt is made up, right? Like you've got Revolt TV, you've got Revolt Editorial and all of the things, and then you've got Revolt Podcast Network. But I'm somebody who is directly triggered by this. And I've been standing up since, you know, when Meg came out with her story. I've been standing up for any artist or any Black woman who has been done harm. So it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I have to personally say, because I have followers who wanted to know when the podcast was coming back. Right. People started asking around September. Talks about the show being greenlit came up about like mid-October. So like this isn't like I just jumped out of the woodworks and was like, let me put my name out here so people can start talking about me. Y'all know I am not that person. Like majority of this attention is bothering me, you know, but to me, I didn't really realize though, when I made the decision that I was one of the first people to really say, I don't even want to be affiliated with him, or I don't even want to be in the, in the talks of a company that involves him, those type of things. So that's kind of how I made the decision. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't a hard decision. It was just a matter of, okay, how do I say this out loud, right? How do I go about putting this out there? Because again, I don't want nobody knocking on my door saying, you're doing X, Y, and Z, but I have the right to say, I no longer want to be a part of something. I no longer want to do this thing. And, my followers wanted to know that. And we're seeing how people are responding to that right now.
Yes, and a lot of it was backlash. Producer Greer put it in there. She said, "What about the backlash?" And that was the reason for me, asking you about the mental space you were in to make the decision, because you do, with much love comes much hate. And so and I've personally been seeing you handling it with grace. However, talk about that, because we do live in a social media era where everyone has a think piece, and they're going to put their pieces on Twitter. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. They feel like they have the right to come for people they do not even know. About situations they have no idea about. And to see them respond to you like that, a couple of them, well, we know that their revolt is going to be just fine, or
and they will be, but for me, it's one of those things where y'all are commenting on the shirt right now. Montgomery brawl, you know what I'm talking about? Like, come on, play with me if you want to. I know where chairs are, you know what I'm saying? And it's just one of those things where it's like, you're mad because a Black woman spoke up and said her piece when she does. I have a platform. Like, look at how many followers I have. Look at I have the receipts where people are asking me this question. So yes, you might not know who I am. You may not know of my story. You may not know of my background. Over 20 years in the media industry. This podcast was not my end all be all. And yes, I was being paid to do this podcast, but this podcast was one of the many streams of income that I have coming in. You all know how I hustle. You all know how I do my thing. So to me, seeing the backlash was more like oh, y'all really think I'm jobless? Like, oh, I'm so sorry you think that. Like, and that's not the case. And then it's also, one of the things that I did see that was a common thing across all of the blogs was where there's a group of people who really believe that I never spoke up in support of Meg. And as far as I'm concerned, like, I was on this show in support of Megan. You can find it on my timeline. Go search and do the things. I supported Megan when she was I believed her when she first came out with her story. I didn't need her to go through all of what she went through in court and all of that to kind of get to the, what we know now with the man being in jail. So it's just very frustrating, because when I said believe Black women, I mean that. I've tweeted that numerous of times, even before, we had, our racial summer, 2020, and with all of the things that were happening after the shootings and all of that, we're losing so many of us. And just in general, when we're dealing with these issues where Black women are being harmed consistently, it's always, and I know I don't want to, because I know there's going to be somebody that's going to say, well, what about Black men? We love y'all. We literally will show up and hold space for y'all. But who shows up and hold space for us? Anytime that I see the backlash, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pray for you because you don't understand. Like, you don't get it. Or, people just really start attacking who you are. People start really like looking for things to kind of say things about you. And, that was one of the things that my therapist, as well as, one of the attorneys that was advising me on how to push this message out that I want to push out, kind of told me to just be prepared for. So I'm not going to go back and forth with too many people. I might have to correct one or two people, which I actually did on Twitter. And that was one of the things that really means to me, is that people just be mindful of, what you're saying, how you're saying it to somebody, because if anybody knows, I'm clapback queen. Like, you want to say something to me to get my attention, you got it. But be ready for when I say what I've got to say and reply to you. And it's not going to come from a malicious place. It's just like, keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. That's all.
Misha, I want to turn it over to you, but right before I do, I wanted to address something that Stacey said, because again, we started it off with the journalist, her column in the Grio, and Stacey, she does actually go into detail about this. Stacey says, D. Barnes, hip hop needs to
always remember her.
Right.
Yes.
He said hip hop needs to finally address, apologize, and formally settle with Dr. Dre, D. Barnes issue that, that's where it should begin. And then
he's right.
The reason why he said that's where it should begin, because I asked Misha, and Dawn, I'm asking you the same thing. And Misha, if you have the floor from here on out, but are we going to see a change in the industry? Like, are we really going to see some people take the lead and really change?
So first of all, and I told her this personally, but I am so proud of you, Don. I am just beaming, knowing that you took a stance, and you were really barrier breaking in that. I didn't even realize that until you just articulated you were one of the first who did so in relation to Revolt. But before we move on, I really just have to say I am so proud of you.
Thank you for that.
Just your bravery. One of my favorite things, Stacey knows this, I always talk about fearless journalism. Not only are you a fearless storyteller, but you're just a brave person in general. So, and I love your shirt.
But thank you.
All the angels need one. We will.
We do. With our names.
I will send the link. I will send the link. It's by a Black woman, Destiny. She's a designer that I met in Atlanta. She lives in LA. She's a fearless Black woman in this industry. She's fought against Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian for some of the styles that they have stolen from her. And I just think it's amazing. But to kind of answer your question, Randy, real quickly, I don't know. And that's frustrating that I can't say yes or no. I would hope that it does encourage people to do something like that. I do know that there's been an expose piece come out about, Diddy and all of the things. If we're, doing our journalistic duty to kind of put that out there. I will say, I was asked yesterday by NBC News when they talked to me for just a moment, which I appreciated them reaching out, and the questions that the journalists had for me was that, do I think that other people associated with Revolt will do the same thing? And I had to tell her no. And I told her because not a lot of people's full intention is in a place to where they're willing to walk away from the thing that has provided either the lifestyle that they love or the access or has given them some type of notoriety and clout, to walk away from that thing, to really march on and say, this is how I feel about something and I'm supporting that. So I just feel like it's just one of those things where I'm praying that it does. I would love to see a real Me Too moment in hip hop, especially with it being 50 years and trying to, get to the point to where what does the next 50 years look like? And in moving forward, we need to call those names out. We need to say who has harmed us. We need to say all of the things. Like, we're still suffering about these type of things. There are people who won't talk about what happened in their childhoods,
Right.
And in a moment of saying something like that real quickly, like Tyler Perry has a documentary out. His ex-girlfriend has, directed this documentary, and it just shows how he dealt with his childhood abuse and all of the things that was done to him and how he was able to get through that. I would love for more Black women being able to voice that and put name and agency to that so that they can move forward and really kind of share their stories, because I'm guaranteeing you there's somebody else in this industry that has not just fully told their stories, and we would be surprised when they do, so I just would love to see a moment happen like that. But when I say I don't know, it's almost as if I would not be surprised if it didn't.
Yeah.
So, I feel like, as I was saying when Dawn first came on, is that some of these women who were affected as young girls are getting older. I mean, Cassie, a lot of Cassie's processing came with the fact that she's now the age that that Diddy was when they started dating. Imagine 18 years of maturity. And so some of these women who were very young, or attempting to climb up a ladder, and so they thought that they had to make or be accepting to certain things. I don't even want to say make certain decisions, but be accepting. And so I think in that way, there will be folks coming out and at least being able to articulate what happens, whether that turns into a justice fight, a civil or criminal battle, I'm not sure. But I do think that we'll hear more people talking about some of the problematic and toxic that happen within the hip hop industry. My concern, and I say this with all love and understanding as a Black woman who works very hard to protect the Black men in my life, and even Black men I don't know, is that because we tend to really protect our Black men, per Dawn's point before, and make space for them, that sometimes I fear that when we're trying to, ensure that they are still looking good and making their money and not trying to mess that up, and maybe that you've even seen them improve and have wonderful families or whatever, that then that turns into a conversation. Are we attacking them? When
it always happens like that too, Misha. Like it's one of those things where it's like, so it's damned if I do, damned if I don't, because even if she had said something earlier on, okay, look at how early, like if we were talking about it's like 2 or 3 years in, and she had said something, then we all know people would have been ready to attack her and blacklist her and kind of just get her out of here and dismiss her, right? And at this point, it's like I want people to really recognize both of these people have daughters. And the victim herself has daughters. And it's like, what do you think she was going to eventually feel in life for her daughters? And because that's something else that I've been thinking about in general, even when the news came out about, with Diddy and everything, I started thinking about his children, like even including his sons. Like his sons think he is end all be all. And we know the one that looks like him, he has to be crushed at this point. You get what I'm saying? Like, and it's frustrating because even I have children. Like I had to think about, okay, me putting myself out here yet again, because y'all know I go viral for damn near just talking about grits. Like I'm like, here I am putting myself out here yet again, but more so in a different light with all of this critique and all of this criticism. And people forget I'm somebody's mom, I'm somebody's daughter, I'm somebody's friend, I'm somebody's coworker. Like I'm somebody. And it's like, it's okay for me to voice how I feel and tell you, like, no, I've been in this situation. I know what it feels like to be manipulated, controlled, and abused and misled to even think that nobody's going to listen to me. To be gaslit because I feel like I want to raise my voice. I can't work under an entity that is associated with someone who has done this to someone at lengths to what he has done. Like I can't wake up and be like, okay, I'm gonna sign my contract today.
Right.
I'm gonna go to the studio today. I'm on the schedule to interview this celebrity today. I don't freaking care at this point, like just because it's like, if I don't come out and I don't say it, right? And if I don't, go against it, if I don't feel the way that I feel, then who's going to actually do it? And I just feel like a lot of times Black women, we sacrifice ourselves to kind of be like, no, this is where it stops.
It was so wild to see people say things like, well, Diddy doesn't make the everyday decisions and you have to understand how a corporation works, as if you did not understand how corporations work with you working there. That was so wild to see people say that. And you handled them with grace. Like I said, Dawn, the way that you put yourself in a mental space to handle going viral with your decision was beautiful, because you literally said, leadership we have that saying that it rolls downhill. Okay,
Yes,
when
it does.
leadership is not saying anything, why would you put yourself in that position, knowing that, like you said, it was triggering for you? And Stacey, absolutely. We know that you were saying that hip hop should start there and begin there, and it's ironic that this took place during Hip Hop History Month, because sometimes when we talk about our history, we do not like to touch the ugly parts.
Come on, Randy.
Ugly parts of our history, we cannot break those generational curses. We cannot move and progress forward as a community. And so the ugly parts of our history has to be talked about.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And it has to be talked about in a way that moves us to change. I don't want the sympathy, I want the empathy.
Yeah.
Right.
Change.
Right. I agree. Thank you for that. That is true.
The last thing we're landing on, I can't believe we're almost done, you guys. I love being in the company of greatness. And Dawn Montgomery and Misha Green are two great journalists, two great, powerful women. Stacey said it's ladies' night or ladies' day is what I like.
Yeah.
We're going to land on Angel Reese. Angel Reese, and any one of you can take it, from here. But if you guys out there have not seen it, but Angel Reese missing the game, allegedly due to grades. And again, the same thing with the Twitter think pieces, you guys, with everyone saying she's making so much money. Why didn't she have anybody, do her grades for her, do her work for her? There was other think pieces saying that, you can't, those attitudes are never going to fly. And even I said, it's almost feels like love and basketball again. You don't want the attitude to be a problem from a woman, but if it's from a man, that it's usually okay. But however, someone replied back to me with Keyshawn Boot, I believe. I think his name is Keyshawn Boot. If I'm saying that name wrong, please forgive me. But how his off-field issues messed up his draft, and now he's probably going to get kicked out of NFL. And so he said, hold her accountable for her actions before she actually ruins her career. And I couldn't do anything but agree with that. But let's talk about it a little bit. And according to producer Greer, those grades situation is actually not true. I know that there wasn't a lot from the coach, Dawn, but Misha.
I mean, no one's really giving enough information, and so it's hard to comment. The coach said, "Yeah, it's obvious she's not playing."
Right.
It is. So what's happening? I think at this time, the best thing to do is to send her love, and I really hope everything is good. The coach saying we hope to see her sooner than later, to me, makes me think that this is something that they're hoping to work through.
Right.
And yet, they're very open about, I love college basketball, by the way. And so when people are like injured, we know that when people, even when grades are a challenge, that's something that's very open and talked about. And so because there's so much speculation around it, I'm curious to know what's going on, and for that reason, I just am sending her love and light.
I think one of the things here is that it's amazing.
Did we lose Dawn? I think we lost Dawn. And I can't wait to hear what she says, because Dawn is she's a sports girl. You guys know that she is a sports girl, baby, and she loves the WNBA as well. And actually had a sports segment that she did. But this whole situation with Angel, like you said, I really do. There she is. She's back. Hey, take it away, Dawn.
So sorry, y'all. Of course, Charlie. But no, like in general, I love how Black women in media and certain media members are really holding space for Angel first and foremost, just because we know, because she is a Black young woman, like she is getting the shorter end of the stick in this conversation. Another thing that I want to just majorly point out that I've just been really, really big on ever since the Brittany Griner situation, where Brittany was, over in Russia, could not get back over here. And Coach Kim Mulkey was asked about Brittany, and she was very dismissive of Brittany. Someone who brought you your first national championship. Someone who you were, this is my, and then all of a sudden you turned up, oh, I'm not speaking on that, or I'm not about to talk about that. When she did that, that was all I needed to know about this glitter high shoulder wearing lady, right? And as far as I was concerned, it was like, okay, so how much more are you going to dig in this situation where you're leaving people hanging? Because that's what she's doing at this point. And she kind of knows that, even in the sense of like, this will tap back into the revolt leadership not speaking up. You're not fully speaking up as a coach. To not only not even just say that it's an injury, to not even say it's off the court issues, and to not even say like it would violate HIPAA, even if it was like a HIPAA situation, like, you know what I'm saying, where you can't specifically speak to it. But at the same time, like we all have to really remember, like Angel Reese has really been making history in women's college women's basketball with NIL and some of the brand partnerships and the things that she's been doing. So whether people want to feel like it's her grades, whether people want to feel like, oh, she's got this attitude because she thinks she's bigger than the game and all of the things, y'all, they have to really, really figure out how to make this work, because LSU's women's basketball program is one of the top programs that's dealing with NIL. So there could be a fallout from that nobody else has had to deal with, you know? And in general, I just feel like Kim, the coach, she's just really, really kind of like trying to have this stance, and it's like, girl, can you and your vibe just tell us the truth about what's happening, or let people do their jobs when they're asking you whether or not she's going to travel with the team? Because even in asking the question of, is she going to make it to, I think it was Grand Caymans, I could be wrong, or something like that, for a game, she was very dismissive. I don't have to talk about that. Please redirect your question, or something like that. And it's like, girl, you're available to the press. You're talking to the press. You've got to come up with something. Like somebody in your athletic department needs to be telling you to say a blanket statement, give us something. And so I don't like how it's playing out. I don't think the coach understands what she's actually placing Angel to look like and to be. She's actually positioning her as somebody that's quite difficult, and or y'all know how they do us. It's like when we start challenging or bucking the system, or really kind of speaking up for ourselves, or saying no, we don't want to do that, or going against the grain, they start saying that we're defiant, we have attitudes, she's hard to deal with, like all of the things. I wish a WNBA team would sit up here and act like Angel Reese still isn't someone to consider in next year's draft, when she's done all of these things. Like, she's done all of these groundbreaking things that she can come into the league and she can probably do the same thing as a professional player. But we all know the disparity in pay. It's part of the reason why this young woman stayed behind to make history the way that she has with NIL versus going into the WNBA. So it's very, very disheartening. It's very frustrating. I'm sick of this coach.
I agree, and I didn't want to really lean on that, but I'm like, that's what it is. I didn't want to I didn't want it to be a men versus women, but OG says it in the chat. He says Ben Simmons had a 1.7 GPA at LSU. Like, listen, and he was the number 1 pick in the NBA. When you think about,
and it's trash.
But I also look at it from a perspective of how, to Don's point, how we just approach Black women, how we're Black women. Because I mean, in many ways, I think Kim Mulkey needs media training and PR training, but I do understand in some ways, just from again, I'm a huge college basketball fan, and the difference that I look at between college and professional basketball is that you see coaches, when you're asking about one player in particular, generally the stars get very defensive, primarily because we're still talking about kids, that there's kids that they really need to protect. And so when I hear Kim Mulkey, who's I really think it's I'm not going to put it that she's a racist white woman, I hope that's not what it is, but it could be. But I do think that she needs media training to really,
Yes.
because right now she has a whole lot of Black women that it looks like she's not protecting. And I think, you know, again, that's really a problem. These are kids. You know, I look at Angel Reese being from, you know, this area. She's from Baltimore, but I'm gonna still claim her from being from this area. You know, that's our baby girl.
Right.
You know, and so I'd like to see us protect. I would like her to, even though we don't know what's going on, which is why
that part.
I would like us to feel like she's protected in this. And if somebody's tweeting, "Don't believe everything you hear," I don't feel that. I don't feel
right,
that.
but also it's like in protecting Black women like this, what, you know, no matter what the age and all of that, I feel like there's a deeper conversation of like allowing Black women to not only be held accountable, but to have the grace to make mistakes, or have the grace to fail, or have the grace to you know, really kind of come out of a bad place. You know, to really, because we're not given that same grace. We're not. We give we extend it to everyone else. We hold space for everyone else. But when it comes to us, nobody is like, you know what? I'm glad you asked that question. What I can tell you is she's doing fine. She's showing up to practice. She is showing up to her classes. And outside of that, we're working on what we need to work on as a team to really position her a little bit better, because we're having a rocky start to the season. Do y'all hear how the fuck that sounds? And excuse me, Grio, for saying it like that, but do y'all hear how that sounds? That sounds like you give a damn.
Hire Dawn, because that's what I mean. Like, it's that training, it's that ability really to talk about these people as if they're people. One,
thank you. Yes.
You know, and to your point, no matter the age, but I do think that these are young women. These are in any case, these are young athletes, right? Who of course need space for failure. I mean, grace for graceful failure, I should say. Of course, need space for understanding, but just, you know, they need to be in some ways treated as the youth that they are, that are about to go. And
can I add another grace? I want to add another grace. They also need grace to celebrate their wins. I saw a lot of think pieces on, the fame got to her head. She was in a Cardi B video, but why can't she celebrate her greatness?
Right.
To number one, okay, most Black women, and raise your hand if you've ever been told you have to be 2 steps, 10 steps ahead. Raise your hand. You know, if you are told you have to be 10 steps ahead, and so you put this effort into building this greatness, then once you achieve it, you are told, no, sit down, be quiet, and dim your light. You know, and it's like, where do you find the balance? Being a young girl, being a young woman, she is in that space to find balance, and she needs to be given the grace to be in that space of finding balance between, you know, learning and balancing how to deal with her greatness, how to celebrate her wins, how to make mistakes, and how to learn from it. And all of it is in allowing her to be, you know, to be Angel. Allow her to be Angel. And like you said, Nisha, hire Dawn to give Kim some PR training and some media training on how to respond, because she's allowing those think pieces to run wild with some negativity surrounding her. I said, I understand being accountable for your actions. I understand making a mistake and learning from that. But bashing Angel, which is what I've been seeing online, is absolutely asinine. And for the coach not to come out, for the team not to come out and make a statement saying, hey, we still support her, we're behind her, we're rallying behind her, and we are allowing her and giving her the space to learn balance, because she is a young woman. She is not a grown adult in the WNBA. She's in college.
Right. She's still in college. And I think a lot of people forget college is supposed to be the space. Technically, it's like the space in between going out, like leaving home necessarily, or leaving, you know, what you've known, to going out, having like that first entry to the real world, and having to learn how to organize and structure your life and create some type of discipline and work ethic so that when you do go out into the real world, you know how to process and, you know, really deal with everything that comes at you, because we all know as grown people, life be life. And these kids don't really know that until they really out here by themselves and they've got to make decisions. But again, it's one of those things where a lot of people are jealous of this young woman. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are upset that she actually has, you know, the type of notoriety that she has. They're upset that she's capable of doing the things that she's doing, and versus them being upset at a child, because she's a child. Now, mind you, she can vote and she can do all the things, but she is still a child.
Right.
To be jealous of a child and envious of a child versus really stepping into your role as a leader, as a grown-up, or as somebody around her that is supposed to provide a space for her to kind of fall a little bit, and you be there to catch her, or you be there to assist her to get up. Because if you ain't gonna catch her, at least be there to hold your hand out to kind of gracefully pick her up and say, hey, this is how we need to move forward. And I don't think that she has that right now. And if she does, we can apologize later on another show. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Miss Sequence is doing that.
No, that's right.
Yeah,
that is
before she had that Vegas thing on, and I just thought I almost lost it when you said Miss Glitter, and I looked and she had all that stuff on.
Listen, that thing be walking around making all noise, you know, whoosh, whoosh, all the damn stuff. Girl, if you don't sit down, ugly.
And listen, Dawn, a mic dropped on that. Also, OG says I can name 10 professional male athletes who are in the NBA and NFL that have some of the worst track records in college. Absolutely.
Come on,
attitude and grades. That's attitude and
grades. Absolutely.
Still.
Yeah,
it's been it has been a pleasure to join my Black Press family, the amazing national correspondent Don Montgomery, also the editor for the Washington Informer, Misha Green. Thank you guys for joining me. Stacey, thank you so much for letting us run Let It Be Known News this morning. Guys, and we'll see you next time.